Come on.
Hi everyone, it's Aaron here from Push Square, and I'm here today to kind of take a track a little away from the video game world just a little bit, because if you're living here in the UK like I am, you'll no doubt have noticed that today sees the release of Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City nationwide in cinemas. Obviously, if you're watching this from the States, you already got this movie. You were able to pre-warn us all about maybe the misfortune or fortunes of having seen the film. But no, I managed to catch a preview screening earlier this week, but I wanted to get a video out there just to talk about the new Resident Evil movie, but also about its status in general on the big screen and how we can potentially resolve this issue of, not doing the Resident Evil stories and characters justice. Now, before we dive into it, I just want to say there's going to be absolutely no plot spoilers for the new movie, so feel comfortable that you can dive into your big bowl of brains with your zombie pal by your side and just kind of get my general impressions and initial thoughts on having seen the movie from a top-down level. So I want to come right out and say that this isn't a terrible movie. It's an absolutely fine one. I think the director, Johannes Roberts, kind of understands the games in a way that perhaps Paul W.S. Anderson never quite did, or at least gave the impression that he didn't on the big screen anyway. And the most obvious example of that is right there in the title, Raccoon City. Obviously, in the games, this place is it's changed and flowed and adapted as to, is it a built-up metropolis? Is it this old backwater town that everybody wants to kind of leave and is slowly rotting? Well, the new movie goes for the latter option, and it really succeeds in presenting Raccoon City as this dark, eerie, grinding place, kind of like the bog or toilet of, you imagine, otherwise flourishing US state. And the movie manages to set that tone really well, and there's just an overall grunginess to this movie that I think long-time Resident Evil fans are gonna really appreciate. I know I did. But then the main problem with the new film kind of comes in that obviously it's no secret now, if you've watched the trailers you're well aware of this. You've got Claire, Chris, Leon, and Jill Valentine all in there, and there are just side characters and B-plot characters that are all thrown in as well, given like little scenes here and there. And this movie is just a little over 90 minutes, like it's under 2 hours. I think it's around about 100, maybe increasing on 110, and it's trying to mush the events of Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2 together, and unfortunately there's just not enough time or money to kind of affectionately bring those events that we know and love to life. We obviously got a bit of a tease before at what the events of Resident Evil 3 kind of would look like with Resident Evil Apocalypse, the second film in the original Mila Jovovich kind of franchise. And I've actually got a big soft spot for that movie. I think they portray the Nemesis character insanely well. And in many ways, I hate to say it, but I think they do better justice to Jill Valentine, Nemesis, and the whole idea of the Umbrella Corporation in those first Paul W.S. Anderson movies. Even if the first movie kind of ended up being its own thing. I mean, you got the zombie dogs in there, you got the lickers in there, but otherwise than that, it kind of just felt like a ho-hum zombie film with an oppressive tone. But no, as I say, this new one, it's very grungy, and I think that was a wise direction to take, because this movie has a relatively low budget at only like 25 million, and you can really feel it whenever you get those kind of iconic monsters filling the frame. Obviously, there's a moment in the trailer where you see the licker up close on screen, and I guess when we all thought around about a month ago when we first got eyes on this trailer and the movie in general, we kind of thought, okay, there's still a bit of time, we can finish the effects and tidy it up a little bit, but no. They didn't do it, guys. It does not look good. Whenever you see the licker, whenever you see the zombie dog, couple of other things I'm not going to mention and won't spoil here, it just doesn't look that great, to the extent that it kind of takes you out the movie, and I don't really believe that Claire, Leon, and all these other kind of iconic characters are actually fighting or should be scared or running away from these monsters. It kind of just didn't work. That's why I think the movie is more successful kind of in its second act, when you really get a sense of the zombie threat, and kind of because of that low budget and because of the overall grunginess, there's this really campy B-movie vibe to kind of the literal effects that they were able to put into the movie. The zombies feel mushy, even if they don't feel that threatening, as kind of a lot of the threats in this movie end up suffering from. But the problem is that the first act is kind of doing a lot of scene setting. You get a bit of context into the backgrounds of Claire and Chris, which isn't a bad idea, to be honest, because in the games obviously it's very limiting. They kind of start on mission, but it pains me to say that kind of everything new in the movie, in the kind of prologue to first act sequence, kind of isn't all that interesting. It's just characters sitting around waiting for the events of the game to happen, and then when the events of the game do eventually happen, they're over just so quickly you kind of don't have time to appreciate them. And obviously, I feel like with Resident Evil, at least on the game side, having such a big cultural comeback, pretty much since Resident Evil 7, but solidified by that fantastic Resident Evil 2 remake from a couple years ago, it's just kind of night and day, and it shouldn't be the situation where you're getting a lesser experience on the big screen when you're bringing these characters to life, especially when you have the chance to flesh them out for. Because don't get me wrong, as much as I love video game Leon and video game Jill, obviously their agency in the game is to simply have you play them. Ultimately, they're a cipher which you have to experience the events through them. And by kind of distancing you away from them, the beauty of a movie is that you kind of get to stand on their own, or at least there should be. And there's really not enough evidence of that in Welcome to Raccoon City. So yeah, we do get the Spencer Mansion. We get the, the iconic helicopter sequence where they kind of crash down and they're investigating what's going on in this spooky mansion. But as I mentioned, you get about 40 minutes build up getting to that point, and then it's kind of all over in 20 minutes. And before you know it, we're kind of rushing towards the end, kind of to the destruction of Raccoon City. The film kind of is running down by a clock. You're constantly reminded how long left you've got until Raccoon City gets nuked, which obviously if you've played the games, sometimes happens within the realms of the lore. But mushing the events of both Resident Evil 1 and 2 together isn't really a good look, especially in a movie so short. And while the Spencer Mansion is a lot of fun, albeit over too quickly, the events down at the RPD are pretty much non-existent. You get the iconic foyer, it's very cheap looking, to put it nice. There's clearly a lot of green screen stuff going on, but I appreciate all that they were trying to do. But you really just get the foyer, the car park, nothing else. I'm debating whether or not what I should say is and is not in there. Basically, if you played the Resident Evil 2 remake, you'll know kind of what a big major component of that is in terms of the threat. Nowhere to be seen in the movie, guys, unfortunately. And then when you consider kind of the point that this movie ends on, it's kind of getting to know that it's so finalized that you're never going to get someone even like Nemesis, because the events of Resident Evil 3 are completely forgotten here. Jill Valentine is busy, off on her mission in the Spencer Mansion because it happens simultaneously with the RPD events, as opposed to the kind of, it happened before. Why can't it happen before now? So Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City, bit of a bust. You can have a lot of fun with it. There's when the action does eventually start, it's mushy and grungy, like I said, and it's kind of visceral, and you want it to kind of fall into that B-movie kind of grindhouse cinema. But the problem is that the actors play it with such dead seriousness, and the dialogue, as corny as it is, there is a Jill sandwich reference in there. Oh boy, is there a Jill sandwich reference in there. It kind of doesn't work. You either need it to fall one way or the other. This movie falls somewhere in between. You're irking fans by doing that, by mushing the events of these two games together, and you're also putting off newcomers as well, because there's a lot of fan service here that fans won't be able to appreciate because they're so miffed about how everything else has been treated, but the general audience goer is going to be lost as well. So this kind of leads me nicely onto the state of Resident Evil on the big screen in general. You already heard it in my kind of initial impressions there. I had a lot more fun with Resident Evil Apocalypse thinking back now. I think, while the effects may not have dated so much, the zombie dogs definitely look better. Nemesis, he's actually there. They built the costume. And I feel like the only way you're gonna get success from this series, which you should do on the big screen because the games are having so much of a great moment right now, is by treating these characters and these familiar stories with enough time and patience and dedicate them the kind of reverence that they deserve. Why not just do a Resident Evil movie where it's totally set in the mansion? Make it a tight 90 minutes. That way you can have time to build upon the characters, develop them, and kind of slowly see them transform into the versions of themselves we know from the game. And that way you have a lot more chances to build suspense, because another problem of the new movie is that we all know what's coming. There's no surprises, hardly, other than kind of a creepy prologue sequence set in an orphanage at the very start. But other than that, it's all over the place. We had examples of good video game movies this year. I would say Mortal Kombat, it was a fun ride. It understood the characters. It knew to get into the action quickly, filled with so many fights. And I bought that one on Blu-ray. I won't be buying Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City on Blu-ray. But anyway, guys, this is all just a roundabout way of me saying that Resident Evil on the big screen, it needs to be better. And I feel like we're gonna have to see this rebooted again and done properly, because for now, the premier Resident Evil experience, no complaints from me, is easily Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation 4, as well as obviously something like Village, which we are far from experiencing on cinema screens. So anyway, guys, those are my thoughts of Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. It's out today in the UK, already out in the US. You may already have seen it. If you have, be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you agree with my points? Do you think I'm too harsh? Is there hope yet that we will finally get a good, dare I say, excellent Resident Evil movie? But anyway, I want to thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video and consider subscribing to the Push Square YouTube channel for everything else PlayStation related. We usually talk video games, I promise, but this will be the last time we talk films, at least until Uncharted arrives next year. But anyway guys, until then, I want to thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. There's only really one monster. Hello?